some snipers or shooters jumped onto the roof, and the roof walls kind of went all the way around the courtyard, and they were standing all the way around the courtyard, and they started shooting. And they shot my brother. So my brother got shot at that time, and he was 11. And as I'm talking about this, I can feel it in my body. They shot him, and I remember just everybody literally just scattering and running.
Hi, it's Calvin Niles, the mindful storyteller, and I am delighted to share with you stories of awakening. Each week, I'm going to be talking to people from around the world of various backgrounds and experiences. People I love, I know, and people I admire, but also those who are completely new to me. One thing all my guests will have in common is that they have been through a journey of awakening. By awakening, I mean a call to higher consciousness and deeper self-awareness beyond material reality. These stories will be real, challenging, funny, stimulating, and insightful. We're going to take our good time with these conversations. So listen from your comfy chair with your favorite drink, or on your weekend stroll, your morning routine, or whatever makes you happy. Stories of awakening with me, Calvin Niles, and I look forward to you tuning in. Welcome, Sabika, my friend, very new friend to me, but I am sure a friendship that will develop because the work that you're doing is so incredible around the inner child. I saw your TEDx talk in Birmingham, I think it was the beginning of this year. And I was just really moved by you, by the parts of your story that I heard. And I'm just so happy that you're coming on here to talk about your journey. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Calvin. And honestly, it's a blessing and it's my honor to join you. And I'm so grateful that you were touched by my story and it resonated with you. So it really is an honor to share these words.
Thank you so much. Well, I mean, I doesn't matter where you want to start, Sabika, anywhere is good. Do you even have a point in your mind where you want to start? It doesn't matter. So where did it all begin for you, your call to higher consciousness, your spiritual awakening?
So I think I'm going to start from childhood. And for me, that's where it all began. And I think I must have been about 5 years old. And I remember sitting on my reception. So I was in reception class at that time. Was I in reception? Yeah, or year one, reception year one. No, reception, yeah. I remember sitting on the carpet and I must have been building one of those Duplo, big, those big Lego Duplo towers. And I remember playing by myself, building this colorful tower, and I just stopped and I could feel like this magical, sparkly, wonderful feeling inside of me. And in that moment, something told me that I was special. And as I felt that feeling, I looked around and it's like I was in my own zone and I could see the rest of the class, all of the other 5-year-olds playing and the teachers. I think my teacher's name was Miss Brown or something. And, I just remember sitting back, just watching everyone. And that's how my life has always been, just sitting back and watching everyone. And I've always kind of felt like the outsider, but with this special, magical, sparkly feeling inside of me. And I always kind of thought there was something special about me, but I just didn't know what that feeling was and why that feeling was there. And so I carried on with life, just knowing that something was there, but kind of ignoring it at the same time. And this is something that I mentioned in my TEDx talk as well. So I am going to put a trigger warning out there for anyone that may get triggered as well. So at the age of 7, I went to Pakistan, and so originally I am from Pakistan, and I went back with my family for my uncle's wedding. And as we went there, I went with my family, and we had been invited to somebody's house, and as we were invited to their house, they have like this open courtyard kind of place, and as we had entered, they had put food out and everything, and that's where everyone was eating. So we were eating at that moment, and what happened was some snipers or shooters jumped onto the roof, and the roof walls kind of went all the way around the courtyard, and they were standing all the way around the courtyard, and they started shooting, and they shot my brother. So my brother got shot at that time, and he was 11. And as I'm talking about this, I can feel it in my body. They shot him, and I remember just everybody literally just scattering and running, and I didn't remember anybody holding my hand and pulling me somewhere. I just ran with the crowd. And I remember all of the women were we ran into the side room. And then as we ran into the side room, we thought we were safe, but we weren't, because they started bashing down the door. And I remember that door. I remember how old and kind of rickety it was, and they bashed that down. So we ran out, and then we went into the next room, which was a middle room. So there was just walls behind us. And I remember we were calling the police, and my mum was there, my sister was there, and a couple of other ladies. And I just felt unsafe. And I remember when, after the event, my brother was taken to hospital, and all of the doctors that helped him. And I remember my mum washing my brother's denim shirt, and I remember the size of the hole that was in it. And for me, the most poignant part was I can recall the redness of the water as she washed that shirt. And it was in that moment that I realized that blood was red. Obviously, I knew blood was red, but I didn't realize how crimson reddish it was. So for a 7-year-old, that was, for anyone really, incredibly traumatic. And my brother did survive, so he is still with us today, and he lives in New York, thankfully. So that's a blessing in itself. But the impact that it had on me individually as a 7-year-old child was immense, and it pretty much took over my whole life. And I only realized this when I had my awakening.
Hi, if you're enjoying this conversation, you might like SOAR Book Club. Many similar conversations are happening in SOAR Book Club, a book club for the spiritually curious. If you like spiritual books and community, then why not join SOAR, where we can grow together, learn together in a fun and nurturing environment. Click the link below in the description to find out more about SOAR Book Club, or to find out how you can join. It'd be nice to see you there.
And it affected us in very different ways. So my sister was affected differently. My brother, who got shot and has the scar, was affected differently, and I was affected differently as well. So the trauma itself impacted me immensely because of who I am and my personality. So after the incident and the years to follow, it kind of became a family story that with time wasn't really ever spoken about. And it wasn't hidden, it just was never spoken about. And it only kind of ever came out if my mum pushed me into the attic, because I was the smallest and lightest to be shoved up there. And I would take stuff down and move stuff around. And if she would ever come past the denim shirt, then we would talk about it again. Or there was a newspaper out, it was called the Lahore newspaper or something like that, and it was about a British boy that got shot. So then we would talk about it again. So it was only ever really talked about in that sense. And I remember not ever telling my friends, especially in primary school, because it was like this weird thing that no one ever experienced. No one would ever really talk about it. And I just chose not to because I thought at that tender age that it's a weird thing and I'd lose friends and they wouldn't want to be my friend. And that's such a naive childlike kind of thinking, isn't it? To say that I'd lose my friends because my brother got shot. So I never talked about it. And so in the years to follow, I just basically kind of lived my life very, very numb. And what I would say is in a disassociated kind of trance-like state where I could see, feel, and hear, but not really see, feel, and hear, like I was in some sort of bubble. So the kind of sense that I got when I was 5 years old, that I was sitting back and watching the world, was worsened and triggered even more so by my brother getting shot, because I felt more closed off and more of an outsider than the rest of the world. So it affected my whole life because I didn't put myself out there. I didn't, and I pretty much stopped talking as well. So I kind of lost my speech. I remember my mum took me to a speech and language therapist, and it's because I didn't feel safe enough to share my words or to talk to people. So that feeling of I'm not safe just sat in me for years and years and years. And I remember it's only been, actually I still kind of do that. So I tend to walk on, like if the cars are driving this way, I will walk on the opposite side so I know who's coming and I know what's approaching me. So I always felt like someone's going to abduct me, someone's going to kidnap me, someone's going to, I just had this fear of humans as a whole, that someone is going to do something to me that's going to hurt me. So it stopped me from probably doing, educating myself in the way that I would have liked to. It stopped me from getting the work that I would have liked to. It stopped me from traveling. It stopped me from making the friends and the connections that I would have liked to, just because I was scared of people and I felt unsafe. And it just was a scary, very scary place to be. Like there was a lot of I'm not sureness. But I think at the end of the day, what kept me going was that special magical feeling inside of me. I still felt that and I still knew there was something there, but I just didn't know what still. So I got to the age of about university age. And traditionally, in a cultural sense, when you get to about, in like the Pakistani kind of culture, when you get to about 20, 21, kind of 22, it's probably a bit more now, you're supposed to be getting ready to get married, right? You're supposed to get married and then have the kids and then continue with the rest of your life. So I went to uni and, it's in terms of guys and relationships and stuff like that. My family always said to me, so I come from a religious family, and they always said to me, be careful of guys because they're like hormonal monsters, and they really scared me. And I was the kind of person, my personality was, oh my gosh, they must really be hormonal monsters. So I was like, stay away, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I knew that I was searching for love, and I wanted something to feel complete, because I felt like there's something special, sparkly, magical inside of me, but there's something missing. So I thought it must be love, right? So
can I just ask a question?
Go for
it. Well, first of all, thank you for sharing this really deep issue that you've experienced, the deep trauma. You went into this catatonic, speechless state after the event of your brother getting shot and the whole trauma around that experience. How long were you having problems with your speech or not able to talk?
So I did talk. So for anyone else, i.e. family and anyone else out there, I was talking. But for me, I felt like I wasn't authentically sharing my speech in the fullest way that I could. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, in terms of like being on the TED stage and things like that, for me, that's authentically me sharing rather than me limiting what I'm sharing.
Yeah.
And because now I feel safe. So I would say until I was 30. And that's when that's when I had my awakening.
Mm.
So from the age of 7 to 30, that's just how I felt. I felt like there was like a cork
Mm.
stuck on me, and it was just kind of like wanting to get off, but it just wasn't. And that's what my speech was like. I wasn't authentically able to express what I needed to. So
That's a good
yeah,
description.
yeah.
That's a
So
good,
that's
yeah.
yeah. So that's about 3 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah. So we're in university, and you were think boys were hormonal monsters and things
Hmm.
like that. And you were, of course, you still had this distrust of people at this time, did you? Or were you starting to trust people and humans again?
No, no. So I only started to trust people when I was having my awakening. So
Right.
yeah,
Okay.
so all of that kind of unfolded together. So it
Mm.
all kind of connected. So yeah, so I was wanting to find love, and I didn't, probably because I nobody's suitable really, Calvin.
Hey
And
man,
also,
good men are hard to find. We're a dime a
yeah,
dozen.
that's true, man.
Oh, we're not a dime a dozen, rather. Yeah.
Yeah, and and also I probably wasn't in that state to attract somebody good. So
Mm.
so probably God didn't want to send somebody my way. So yeah, and I felt like love in general is something that I needed. So I decided that I do want to get married, and I do eventually want to have kids because I want to pass on whatever I learned eventually in life. And I flirted with spirituality quite a lot at university. So I studied philosophy and religious studies, and coming from a religious background, I naturally thought, I might do something in religion and become a preacher or something or another. But when I got to university and I was studying philosophy, I started questioning things a lot more, and not in the sense that I don't want to do this, but just like what do I feel inside of me when I see these things and when I'm practicing these things in terms of ritualistic religious things. And I felt quite empty. And when I found spirituality, for me, that meant loving God and connecting with God. It doesn't matter how we do that. It doesn't matter what religion we are. It doesn't matter when or how, or it's just the why, connecting to the why and then loving God. That's what spirituality was for me. And so I never questioned God in a philosophical kind of sense. I always knew God exists, and that's it. And
Mm.
the search for love kind of developed into, I want God, and that's the love that I want. And that's when it became a ravenous kind of search for me in how do I connect with this God that created me.
Mhm.
So, and it wasn't like a forefront, it was ravenous, but it wasn't at the forefront. It was just kind of like there. So I knew it was there, but it wasn't my out there kind of goal. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
It was like unconsciously
it's
there.
like a fire that's just constantly burning.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just constantly burning, burning,
Yeah.
burning, burning, burning. But it's not to the point where it's dominating your everyday actions. Is that
Yeah.
kind of what you mean?
Yes,
Mm.
exactly. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. So it was there, and I kind of just got on with my life. And at the age of 2021, I think I got engaged at 2021. We were married. It was like kind of like the borderline of just before my birthday. Um, so I got married. It was an arranged marriage, not forced. So just putting it out there because some people think arranged is forced. I wasn't like
Yeah.
sat on and like, get out to this guy. So I did. I made that decision, and I felt that I did talk to God about it, and it was the right thing for me to do at that time
Mm.
and at that age. And I felt that we were a match. He was tall, dark, handsome, kind of like the cliche kind of thing,
Hmm.
and good financial background and all of this kind of stuff. And
Yeah, ticked all the boxes.
We
tick,
kind of
tick, tick.
we got along. We got along, but eventually it got to a point where I felt betrayed in that marriage. And it's a very heavy word to use.
Yeah.
And the reason why I say betrayed and not anything else, even like a lesser weighty word, is because it's heavy. And it was heavy inside of me. And the reason why I felt he betrayed me was because he never loved me in the way that I needed to be loved. But I also feel that I betrayed myself because I never loved myself in the way that I needed to be loved.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's quite powerful, actually, what you said there. So in other words, there was like an insatiable need, and you were hoping that he would meet that need.
Yeah.
And because he wasn't meeting that need, because by definition, insatiable means you weren't getting satisfied, you felt that he wasn't what you thought he was or should be or could be to you.
Yeah.
Wow.
And piggybacking on that is the fact that I didn't know what that love was for myself. So how could he even know what that was?
Yeah.
So yeah, we have 3 kids, and my oldest is now 8 and my youngest she's going to be 5. She's going on about her birthday party for forever, and we're going to be celebrating this weekend. So yeah, they're wonderful kids. And but it came with a price, that wonderfulness, because I've worked so hard to even understand what loving them means. And over the course of having those 3 kids, I probably had depression from before anyway, but I feel postnatal depression, undiagnosed, really hit me, and it felt like I was suffocating with those 3 kids. They're very close in age gap. So we had moved out from London. I'm from London originally. We had moved out from London, moved to Scotland for a year, and my youngest was 2 weeks old at that time. So I was really struggling. And the reason why I mention undiagnosed is because I felt too scared to reach out for help, because I just felt that they'll probably take my kids away, or they'll call social services or something, just because I was struggling with my mental health. So I didn't. So I struggled alone. And I've always been given this label of, you're the Iron Lady. So I always kind of kept saying to myself, I'm the Iron Lady, I can deal with this, I'm the Iron Lady, don't ask for help, kind of thing. So it became like a vicious circle.
It's tough, isn't it? Because the people, and I kind of identify with some of the kind of the defense mechanisms that we put in place to protect ourselves from being hurt can sometimes lead to the perception that we're indestructible, or can take so much, or what have you. And then people are like, what, you've got feelings?
Yeah. Wow. And it really connects with toxic positivity. And as a society, we really are toxically positive, and we just kind of, there needs to be a balance, right? Between you're doing great and you can do this, and why don't you stop and acknowledge your feelings and seek help if you need to. So it's a balance, and positivity can be toxic at the end of the day. So I eventually I moved to Birmingham because I wanted to home educate my kids. There's a massive home ed community here, and home educating my kids was strenuous in itself because I was struggling mentally, and then having the kids around me all the time, and making that choice was massive. And one of the reasons why I wanted to home educate is because I wanted them to learn the best of me, and of manners, and the best of being a human being. And I wasn't at that time the best of being a human being. I was broken, and I was suffering, and I was suffocating, and it was just distressful. And I mentioned this in the TEDx talk that there was a pinnacle point in my life where, I always used to drive under this bridge near my house with my kids. I used to drive a lot with them because I felt like it was a serene place where they just would either sleep or just be okay. So we would drive quite a lot. We would drive under this bridge often, and I would every time I used to drive under, I used to think to myself, what would it be like if I jumped? And then the moment used to pass, and then I would see a knife, or I would see some pills, and I know that's how people do take their own lives. And I would think to myself, what is the easiest option? And I got to a point where I thought, well, I'm suffering so much in myself that, but I love God. So I kind of got to this point where I thought, God will be okay with me taking my own life because I know he's there, kind of thing. I didn't get to this point of he loves me, but I just knew he's there. And I kind of justified it to myself, but I never, it's hard, isn't it, to do that? So I never had the guts to do that. But there was this one night where we were driving under the bridge, and it was raining immensely, I remember, and like it literally felt like there was hailstones hitting the windscreen. That's how hard it was raining. And then there was this woman who, we were stuck in traffic, and a woman came and tapped on the window, and I was with my kids at that time. And I remember she had eye contact with my son who was sitting next to me, and she paused for a moment, and she thought about how she was going to word what she was going to say. So all she said was, there was an incident of a woman from the bridge. And in that moment, I felt number than I normally felt numb. And I felt like I had pins and needles actually in my hands. And I don't know what happened to that lady after, but she just went, and the window went up. And I remember saying to myself, that is what happens when you jump. And I felt like that was God speaking to me in that moment. That is what happens. I've always asked, what would happen if I jump? And God said to me, that is what happens when you jump. And it was a woman who was, and I still pass that bridge today. And every time I pass that, I just remember her lying on the floor. So it was a massive wake-up call for me. That wasn't my awakening. That was, I suppose, the first time that God spoke to me in that way. So after that, I did end up at a self-help kind of session, and it was an amazing session. And at the end of the session, the guy put out some powerful question cards, which I know you've got one of. And the card that I got was, the question on there was, who am I when I'm alone? And I didn't know the answer to that question, to be fair. I didn't. So that card itself became, it kind of gave me more purpose to my life. And the journey that I was on from before, that fire that you mentioned that I had that was kind of hidden, that card was like fuel for the fire. So it triggered me even more to delve deeper into myself. So I eventually went to a couple of sessions, and I started digging more and more into myself, and I was connected with a coach. And this coach mentioned, we had a couple of sessions together, and one of the sessions he said, oh, can we reschedule? And I said, okay, yeah, that's cool, we'll reschedule. And I was quite worried because he was so professional that he would never ever cancel or reschedule or anything like that. So I knew there must be something in terms of why he's doing that. So as we got back to our next session, he explained, which he didn't need to, but he did, and he said his brother got shot. So when he said that, it felt like Pandora's box had opened for me, and that is when my spiritual awakening began. Because when I heard that, that was the trigger that I needed, the ultimate trigger that I needed for me to start my journey into myself. And how often, the reason why no one else has ever triggered me is because how often do we come across people whose brothers have got shot, or whose someone has got shot? I mean, I'm not the people that I sit with and who I would generally talked to would never have said that.
Yeah.
So for him to say that, I feel like that was divinely planned.
Mm.
And now that I did ask him after all of my healing and everything, I asked him, why did you say it? And he said, I don't know. So for me, that was like
A sign.
yeah, that was crazy. And so when he said that, the months and the like few years to follow, kind of the triggers of how the event happened and things that are inside of me kind of started fitting together. And how I experienced that event when I was 7 years old kind of came back together. So while I was, I remember vividly feeling what I felt at that time. So as he explained it, I could feel how I felt as a child and how unsafe I felt, and I could smell the blood and I could hear the screaming. And so everything kind of started piecing together in terms of, and that's how trauma works, right? So the experience of a trauma, because it's so traumatic, what our brain naturally does is it just fragments the experience like a puzzle. So naturally, when you're triggered, the pieces of the puzzle start coming back together and you start piecing it together. So who I was and the things that I had kept in my unconscious mind started coming together from that one trigger. So things that I had hidden in myself and things that I had made myself believe that I wasn't lovable for kind of started coming forward, and the puzzle of my life and who I was started piecing together. So from that, I really started working on my self-love and who I was as a person, and understanding what my purpose was in this world, what I was supposed to be giving to other human beings, what I'm supposed to leave here, what I'm supposed to be giving to my kids. And I began reparenting myself, because things in terms of my mother wound and my father wound started coming up. And though I love my parents to bits and they're absolutely loving and so supportive, but everybody still has mother wounds and father wounds, right? And things that we haven't thought of, and things that are unconscious, our inner child has hidden from us because we feel unsafe to address them. So things for my mother wound and father wound started coming up, and I started reparenting myself in terms of just allowing my inner child to feel safe, to embrace her, to say those words, you are safe. And no one is out there to hurt you. No one's going to abduct you when you're walking on the street. You're 30 years old now. No one's going to do that to you in this place, because you are safe right now. And I started playing, and I felt that I had lost my childhood because I didn't play. That I didn't have that joy and that excitement and that kind of effervescent, that energy that children have. So I did started playing, and I was enjoying it.
So when you had this question, who are you when you're alone? I mean, this is quite a powerful moment, isn't it? Because just one question opened something inside of you. What was your next immediate action as it pertains to doing self-work after that? I mean, obviously you were thinking about this question, contemplating it and pondering it, and all these feelings were coming up. But what was your first step towards, I'm going to do X? When did that happen, and what was that step where you consciously said, right, I'm going to allow this healing to take place, or work with my inner child, or, confront or allow, or whatever language is most appropriate?
I think it's when I did shadow work. So I don't know if you've come across the term shadow work before.
Yeah, this is Carl Jung's work, isn't it?
Yeah.
The psychologist, yeah.
Yeah. And the shadow connects with the inner child, and it's all about how things sit in our unconscious mind. So when I started doing shadow work, I think that's truly when my self-excavation started. And that's when I felt that I could.
I'm loving the words you're using, by the way. Ravenous fire, self-excavation, toxic positivity. I'm loving it. Yeah, it's
This
really,
is
really good labels that are really helpful.
good.
When you kind of like pinpoint something, it's just like, that's it. Yeah.
And this is it, Calvin. This is what I feel is my authentic speech. And I
Yeah.
didn't have this before. It was on a very like, I feel like these words come from me because they want to talk what I feel.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you get that kind of feeling.
Yeah, yeah, it's really, 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 and it does show for me listening to you. I'm getting chills listening, and I'm thinking, yeah, I get it. I understand what you're saying. I mean, I know language can only transfer a certain amount of experience, but
Yeah.
it helps me to understand. So thank you for your for your very articulate way of describing.
You're welcome.
Mm,
So yeah, that is when my self-excavation worked. And for me, that was because I feel that I have always worn a mask in front of other people. And that question for me, who am I when I'm alone, meant I need to find out who I am without that mask. So what happened was I was wearing that mask in front of myself as well. So I still didn't know who I was. So shadow work for me was removing that mask of understanding who I was for myself before I show myself to other people. So one of the things that connected on from that shadow work was being introduced to the Enneagram. I don't know if you know the Enneagram.
mm-hmm. But you can
So
describe it just so, in case I've got anything misunderstood about this, is all about the emotions and the personality and how that shows up with them. Is that right?
yeah, so it's kind of seen as a personality tool, but it goes a
Mm-hmm.
lot more than like the MBTI that people know about.
Yeah.
And yeah, so so the reason why it goes a lot more is because I feel there's a lot of God involved in it, and there's a lot of spirituality. It's deeply rooted in spiritual roots, and it crosses over between Christianity, Judaism, and Islam as well. And the reason why it's very godly and spiritually driven is because it basically reveals to us what our God-given natural traits are. And the purpose is not to just sit in that. So there's 9 core types, and there's plenty more when we go into it, but there's 9 core types. And it's not to say that, Calvin, you're a type 4 or you're a type 2, for example. This is your core type. These are your core motivations. These are your core fears. Now grow. So don't just sit in that core type 2 or type 4. The aim is to become the best.
Evolve.
Yeah, evolve and
Mm,
take the best of all of the types and invoke it inside of you. And that's basically a Buddha-like person. So
mm,
the aim is to constantly grow, right?
mm.
So I felt the Enneagram was a pinnacle point in my self-excavation, because with the shadow work and with the inner child, I was tapping into who I actually am and releasing and embracing as well, positive and negative, taking those words out of, things like anger, things like jealousy, and things like shame. Like there is no positives and negatives in it. They just are. So embrace it.
Yeah.
I have anger issues. I'm a liar. I am selfish. I can say that because I am, and
Yeah.
not in a negative
Sometimes.
way. Yeah, that's it. And it's
Yeah.
not a negative thing. It's
Yeah.
sometimes we have to have anger to revolt against, oppression. That's positive, right? So it's embracing all of that. And then the Enneagram revealed for me that my core fear is rejection and feeling unloved. So, and my core motivation is to feel wanted. So the reason why it's sat so deeply inside of me is because since I was a child, I always kind of felt rejected and unloved. And not because I wasn't in a loving, I was in a loving family, but in those times that I needed that support, like when my brother got shot, what I probably should have had is somebody to hold my hand, to hug me and to say, you are safe, you're okay. That didn't happen because, of course, my mom was all over the place. Her son just got shot.
Yeah. And everybody there is also a victim of that situation as well in
Exactly.
their own way. And
Yeah.
I can't even begin to imagine the torment that sort of ensued in people's personal lives after that experience. So yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And everyone reacted so differently to it, and they've internalized it so differently as well. And that's just how I internalized it. I internalized it that I didn't receive the support that I needed. So I felt rejected, and then I felt unloved. And then obviously going on in terms of like my depression and the betrayal in my marriage, unloved, rejected, unwanted, kind of. So it snowballed. So this core feeling of rejection and the core motivation to feel loved just made sense for me. It just clicked for me that this is what it is. I always just kind of want to feel loved and wanted. But for me, I needed the journey that I then went on from there is understanding really and truly what self-love was. What I needed to do was to self-love and to self-accept. And that's it. And then everything else that everyone else gives me is additional. That's the bonus, right? I'm just filling up what I need for myself. And then if I
Yeah.
filled up what I need for myself, like filling up the jug, right?
Mm.
Then I can then give to others, like I needed to give to my kids and I wasn't able to at that time. And also whatever anyone else tops up is a bonus because I'm already filled up and I'm not reliant on anyone else to fill
Mm.
that up for me. And then I can't resent them because they haven't given that to me.
Yeah.
So, I went through a phase of detaching myself from unhealthy relationships and unhealthy needs, I think, the most.
Yeah.
And, I got to a point where my self-acceptance and my love and the meanness that I was looking for, it was always inside of me. And that's what that magical sparkly feeling was that I felt when I was age 5. That's exactly what that was. That magical sparkly feeling was the love of myself, which is divine love, that I was yearning and I was looking for. And I always knew it was there, but I just didn't know what that was in words. And I didn't know. And I think that's why I felt quite speechless and wasn't able to talk because I couldn't put that feeling into words. And I came to learn that God is the unwounded parent that
Oh
all of us
man,
need to
this
embrace.
is another good word. Unwounded parent. Oh, I'm gonna need a new book to note a lot of these expressions down. That's so powerful. I mean,
Yeah.
when something hits you and it lands, and you just go, "Yeah,
Yeah. It's that
that's
ding
true.
light
That's
bulb
true.
moment.
Yeah, that's true when something sounds true."
Mm, yeah.
Wow.
I always say it resonates. It doesn't resonate with everyone, but it resonates with those people that feel it on that same vibrational kind of energy level.
Mhm.
So, where was I?
So
Yeah,
you
God is
discovered,
God
yeah.
is the unwounded parent that I was looking for, right? And it
Mm.
doesn't replace my parents, but God comes above everyone and everything else. So when I realized that I have that inside of me, I felt invincible. And that magical feeling that I was looking for was God's love. And
Mm.
the answer in terms of that question, who am I when I'm alone, is that I am God's child and I am love. And so much so that I've got it tattooed on my wrist. So I am love. And when I know that I'm love, then everything else stems from that. And now going forward after this whole journey that I've been on and crazy crazy journey that I've been on, and in terms of the spiritual awakening and dark night of the soul and all of this kind of stuff, everything just makes sense for me. Like before, it was just like, where am I being led? What is this next step that I'm taking? Where am I going? I can't see in this dark tunnel. But everything just makes sense now, Calvin. And I know that now that I've got that divine godly love inside of me, every other relationship that I now have, in any sense, not just in a romantic sense or anything like that, any relationship that I have will be built on top of that foundation.
Yeah.
So there are not going to be any unmet needs. There are not going to be any expectations that are not met or anything in that sense, because I am me.
Yeah.
And that's it. So
Wow.
yeah, the love that
Jeez,
I was seeking is in me. That's what it was.
it's so powerful. And you know, when you say it, it sounds like so simple, but you've gone through so much to realize that,
Yeah.
haven't you? You've gone
And it was,
through a lot of experiences, her pain, trauma, deep work, self-exploration, and everything to experience that.
yeah. Yeah, I was just going to say that it was, as you said that,
Yeah.
I remember myself like for days and nights, and not consecutively, but over the period of the time that I've cried myself to sleep. And it's been hard. It's been very violent. It's been very lonely. It's been very dark and suffocating. And when people talk about healing, they don't specifically talk about the darkness and the hardships of it. They just think it's meditating in a natural kind of,
Unicorns and
oh
rainbows.
yeah, kind of thing. And
Right.
it really is not. And
Yeah.
this is what it's about. This is what self-revolution and all of this stuff is about. It's hard and it's violent, but at the end of it, you learn to enjoy that darkness. And that's why I do black, white, and yellow. You learn to enjoy the loneliness because you're not alone, because God is with you. And it doesn't hurt anymore. There's joy in that. There's joy in that pain. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Because what you're saying is that you are in full acceptance of what's alive
Yeah.
inside of you and in your experience. And so then there's a wholeness that starts to arise out of that acceptance, isn't it? Because you're very clear and saying that you were able to illuminate certain parts that you couldn't maybe see before, or piece together parts that were fragmented, but also at the same time just accept them as they are.
Yeah.
So in that instance, I guess that wholeness that comes from that maybe feels joyous.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like a kintsugi bowl. I don't know if you know kintsugi.
Yeah, where is this the Japanese sticking back together of
Yeah.
the broken with the golden glue or golden
Yeah.
welding or whatever?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. And that's what if you were to represent me in an image, I feel like that's what it would be. Yeah. And many others. And I think that's what I've learned, that I'm not alone, and I'm very special, but I'm special with other special people in God's eyes.
Yeah.
And there's so many out there, and this, of course, with this, the podcast that you're doing, that everyone has their own story and everyone has their own journey that they're on, and we're all special in that way, and that's how we connect, because we're alone but we're also together. So and I think that's one of the biggest things that changed for me in terms of, and during COVID, seeing how people can come together, and people are, human beings are beautiful people, and they're not always out there to get you or to abduct you or to shoot you. And
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I love the way you put that. It reminds me, one of my favorite teachers, a man called I said one of my favorite teachers, there are lots of them, but somebody whose work has really helped me in my darkest hours, a man called David Hawkins. And he once said, that how they say that every snowflake is unique. A snowflake is never replicated.
yeah.
It says, we are special. A snowflake is so special, so unique, but it's still a snowflake. It's these paradoxes that are arising everywhere,
Yeah.
you know. Your journey is unique, but it's like you say, it is everybody's got loads of journey. Your
Yeah.
experience is special, but everybody's special. And then it kind of bridges that I and then to we, I guess. Is
Hmm.
that where you are now in your space? Because I've noticed your work is very much about serving others,
Yeah.
your raison d'etre, if you like. What's now this journey led you to, not just necessarily from a work point of view, but you can, if that's relevant, but just as a human being, like where are you? Has this helped you to heal your marriage, or have you moved on from your marriage? How's your relationship with your kids, and how's this now showing up? The sense of wholeness and continual evolution for you manifesting in your life.
Yeah. So I, as you know, I'm the reparenting coach, and I am here to serve, and I guide people um, to heal from their, their childhood wounds and their unmet needs, and to detach from unhealthy attachments. Because I feel when people are able to let go of those things, then they're able to then create a foundation of self-love, and then create better and healthy attachments and relationships. And the reason why I love doing that is because I've lived it. I believe it works. And also relationships on a human level, and I guess on a soul level, those connections are the most important connections. And family is essential, friends are essential, partners are essential, children are essential. These are all relationships that we all find ourselves in, and they are shaken up because our foundation in ourselves is not strong. So everything that we build on top of that is not built on a firm foundation. So that's the work that I do, and I absolutely love it. And um, I really feel it is my space. Apart from that, in terms of with my own children, and as I mentioned, the relationships that we have with our children is essential, because the age that our children are and the experiences that they have, they're direct triggers for us. So when my child, well, one of my children is 5, she's a girl as well, so she triggers me quite a lot in terms of what I needed when I was a child. And like when my son is 11, for example, he's going to trigger me in certain ways, and that's what happens. So I now feel like, and I felt this the other day, and I felt so damn good feeling it. I really love them, I really do. And it's probably very strange for you to hear that, Calvin, because or anyone else that is going to be listening after, because a mother is naturally supposed to love her children, right? But I never did. And when I look back at pictures of my children, and when I had given birth to them, or I had just brought them home, or I remember nursing them, and I never felt that connection, that love connection. And now I do. So the journey that I've been on, and the reparenting that I've done with myself, and what I do has helped me to bring love connection between myself and my kids. And that's the ultimate thing that children need to feel, right, for them to then be who they need to be. So yeah, and I think in terms of marriage, the relationship of understanding who I am in that marriage has improved. So now I can show up in that marriage knowing that I haven't brought wounds and past traumas into this. I've kind of wiped the slate clean, and now I can just be who I am without having, unconscious thoughts and feelings and emotions kind of overtaking what I am interpreting my husband to say, or what I'm interpreting him to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So now I can be a clean slate and just see him for who he is, rather than having underlying, why is he saying this, or why is he doing that, or why is he not doing this? Is it because of, it's just, I'm here, and I
Mm-hmm.
can hear you, I can see you, I can feel you, and I can do what I need to do in this moment in time.
Mm.
And I've also become more trauma aware. And I'm more aware of generational traumas and how that has shown up for me, and how I can see how it shows up in my husband as well. So it brings compassion, because I can see why he does what he does in certain places, and it kind of, it's good for him actually. It gives him the get out of jail free card because I'm just like, yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, it's not your fault. It's 6 generations of conditioning, but you're still going to get a slap.
He doesn't know that secret though, so because I know he'll use that card. It wasn't me.
Yeah, we just won't let him see this podcast. That's fine.
No.
Oh wow. Well, I mean, the work that you are doing is absolutely incredible. And I just knew we had to have a conversation, because what you're doing really is, it the heart just knows. My heart just said, yeah, I can see very clearly and feel the power of what you're doing. And just so delighted to connect with you, and have you on the show. And I'm looking forward to us growing together in whatever natural way unfolds. And thank you for being on the show.
Thank you. Honestly, it was an absolute pleasure, and it was it was really good to connect back with myself and bring it all forth again, and to share that with you. And I also wanted to thank you for holding that space for me. It was a very warm and welcoming, safe space, and that's why I felt so safe to share what I needed to share.
What is most meaningful for you in 2022? Is it healing and forgiveness? Is it love and belonging? Or maybe it's the courage to be and to act. Soar Book Club has all of this for you. If you want to read more and need accountability to keep you moving forward in your already busy life, are you looking for inspiration to develop your spiritual awareness? Maybe you want to be part of a positive community during these uncertain times, or connect with like-minded people who love stories and books. Then join Soar Book Club. Hop on board. The train is about to leave the station, and I would love to have you on the journey with me. So click the link below to join. That's Soar Book Club with me, Calvin Niles. I hope to see you there.